Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode. Great to have you on another Misadventures podcast. The theme that I have, though, primarily for this episode is to discuss this dynamic on the ratio, the balance for leaders as to how much of their work, their area of focus should be on their technical capabilities versus leadership. And I'm going to ask you to pause this video or the podcast at some point here, not quite now, to be able to go and give some thought and maybe write some things down. I was talking with a senior executive for a retailer last week, and he talked about when he came into the organization that he's with now, that his boss asked him to be able to go and list down the ratios, the percentages at the various leadership levels of how much their time should be dedicated to delivering on their tactical expertise, and how much of it should be focused on being a leader, to driving leadership. And this person told me about his experience with that, writing his ideas down. His boss wrote his ideas down, and then they compared notes. And this was illuminating for this executive because he came from an organization that was not overly team-oriented, that focused in on individuals driving for performance. So it was a way for him to be able to understand how, one, that organization might look at things, the new one, but also where he could have the most impact. Was it with his deep technical expertise to be able to go and tell people what to do, or to lead them to help them figure out how to do something to go through the right process? And the reason why I mention this and have this as the topic for our episode today is because we at Orgometrics see this constantly. Quite honestly, mostly in K-12 education. It is so prominent where members of the executive team, they call them the cabinet, talk about so much that they have to go and put out fires and take care of all these different technical, tactical issues that when you hear about them, you go, why aren't they handled at lower levels? And what are the implications of these senior leaders having to deal with these down in the weeds type of issues, damage control things, fix something that didn't work, what have you? And as we've talked with these school districts, and it happens a lot in organizations, into corporations, as well as law enforcement and government, we see so much misalignment that because these organizations are not leading in a manner that drives alignment to mission and vision, that one, these problems prop up in the first place, but then also there isn't the capacity set forth at the proper levels, whether they be leadership or not in leadership, to be able to go and handle it at the right level. So it gets brought up and time is taken on those things that don't provide as much value to the organization. It just tries to calm things down. So I'd like you to take out a piece of paper, or if you're in the car, put this in your head. I'd like you to ask yourself this question. At the various leadership levels of your organization, from your front line team leads and managers all the way up to the president, CEO, I'd like you to be able to go and ponder this question first. What percentage of your success or the success of the leader at that level is dependent upon their technical and tactical knowledge, experience, and expertise? And how much of it is related to being a quality leader? So hit pause, take some time to think about that, write it down, put it in your head, and then when you're ready, go and hit play again. So thanks for doing that for me. I really appreciate it. I would imagine that at the different levels that you have, there's a changing of the ratios that at the front line may be more focused in on the technical and tactical experience and capability in favor of leadership, to those at the top that might have a better balance of leadership to their technical expertise. Let's go at these levels, and I'll provide you what we've found in our experience, in my opinion, on what these ratios could be. And they're going to be squishy and soft, and it may be different depending upon the type of organization you're in, but this might give you an idea. And I have a feeling that the numbers I give may be significantly different than yours. So if we start at the frontline leader, this is an individual that has likely been put into the position because of their expertise and their capabilities in getting the technical job that they're now supervising done. And they might be asked to try and impart that knowledge, that expertise onto different people. Say, do this, do that. Oh, you have this problem? Tell me about it. Oh, this is the solution. You do this, you'll be good. Versus the aspect of helping these individuals that report to them on, how are you seeing this? What are the various components of the issue you're looking at? What have you gone through in terms of a process to be able to identify some possible solutions? We talked about this early on in terms of the empowerment and accountability pillars that we have when I explain them. There's that balance, right, on making sure that you get things done on the front line, because it's about cranking out those tasks and making good things happen on a consistent basis. And the leader, the frontline leader, can go and use his or her technical experience just to be able to get things done. And the hope is that the individuals on the front lines take that in through osmosis and memorize that in this situation I do this because that's what my boss told me to do. And I think this is probably where there's much more play in what this ratio might be. Some of you listening might have put down that it will be 80% technical and tactical expertise and 20% leadership. Maybe 70-30. But my guess is that you overly weighted towards the technical and tactical expertise because you're leading these people to learn how to just do these tasks. You're training them. Are they being told to do things in this specific cadence? Or are you working with them to be able to understand the objective? What do they want to accomplish as an organization, as a team? And then helping that individual find the nuances that will work for them to be able to get there. It may be a different path than what the frontline leader is looking at. But it may end up being better because that frontline worker may have some different experiences, some different viewpoints. So quite honestly, as opposed to an 80-20 towards technical expertise. I'm thinking it's about 50-50 or even 40-60. There's such a blending that you can go and say, hey, when I come through this situation, I thought this way. I processed it this way, and it led me to this conclusion, which has worked for me. What have you seen? So it blends that technical expertise, not just in the solution, but the process as to why it worked for that now frontline manager, as opposed to saying, do this, do that. So there's a mix. But the real secret sauce is to be able to help these people understand the process and the logic behind it, as opposed to how to go and do step 1, 2, and 3. Now, obviously, there's going to be certain areas like a manufacturing line may be a do it this way. This is how we're trained. If this type of error code comes up, it means this, so do that. And as that employee on the line learns, they may come up with some different things. But a lot of times, it's how do you go and spark the creativity and fuel the fire of the individual to find their own path. Now, if we get up to middle management, they have responsibility probably for a couple of teams that have some dissimilar functions, that have multiple workflows that they may not have even dealt with in the past. So say for a marketing manager or a marketing director, they may have come up in the digital marketing area, but they may not know customer lifecycle management. Once you actually get the customer, what's the cadence to be able to go and keep them and bring more value? They may not be so experienced on the production side, the creative side, because they were looking at data on how to actually go and drive open rates and click-throughs. So as you move up into the middle management, there's going to be things that you don't have the technical expertise in. But maybe you have rotated through, so I'll back off a little bit. So you might have gotten to the point where maybe this is 50-50, 60-40 on technical expertise, because you still are not that far removed from actually being in the trenches. You may work with the managers who report to you, the frontline leaders, on, is this project getting done? Are we on time? What's our error rate? What's our customer complaint first call close rate? You're looking at those things, as opposed to how are you leading these frontline managers to be able to go and look at their team and trying to maximize the objective. You don't need to tell them how to specifically do their management job. You're trying to teach them how to be a better leader and leading them through the process of making their own impact and working with their teams, because you may have deep technical expertise, but you want them to find their own path. You may have little technical expertise, so you'll be asking them, if you ask them the right questions on how they're leading through things and how they're connecting with other teams, you're having a bigger impact. Quite honestly, the more that this ratio skews towards leading, the better. If you're seeing that a lot of issues pop up to you to make the decision, take a look and see if there are similarities, if there are reasons why these symptoms keep popping up, and see if there's a disease, and set the team off to be able to go and provide a cure, instead of just handling them through your technical expertise. Now, as we get at the senior executive levels, once again, you probably went and had a higher number for the leadership. Maybe you went 60-40. Maybe it got to 70-30. Because now you're handling a larger organization. You're seeing the strategy. You're less involved in the day-to-day types of activities to know everything that should be done. You may have come up with deep technical expertise, but there's a lot that you're not going to know. So obviously it's going to be more focused on leading. But the question is, how are you leading? Are you thinking you're leading because you're taking care of the issues that are popping up and providing some expertise, asking the right questions? Are you checking to make sure that your mid-level leaders are performing on their projects and initiatives and where they're at in the timeline, and leading to see, okay, what problems are you having? Why is something overdue or over budget? And putting some, hey, why don't you do this? Try that. Or are you leading to build leaders? There is a difference. The more that you can lead to create leaders that think for themselves and can go and catalyze themselves as well as others that report up to them, the more power your entire organization is going to have. So if you happen to be a K-12 leader in a cabinet, are you working with the principals or the people, the managers in your functional support teams to go and work through problems and issues and timelines? Or are you helping them become better leaders for the teachers and staff? Are you trying to communicate across the organization the great things that are being done, how and why they're connected to the mission, and calling out the way the culture needs to be able to keep moving in that direction? Or are you reporting on results saying, hey, we had a chance to do this. Our test scores were this. It's somewhat of an improvement. I would dare say that going through and putting out fires and helping the middle managers and the middle stage leaders deal with issues is not leading. That's taking care of technical and tactical issues. Then obviously if you're at the C-suite, president, CEO, you should be really driven towards leadership of the organization, of the executive team. If you put anything less than 80% leadership and 20% technical expertise, I'd like you to rethink the basis for your reasoning and logic for that. The president and CEO, they may have come up through the operations ranks or the finance ranks or the sales ranks. They're going to be able to provide little to no technical, tactical expertise to frontline workers or even first-line leaders, middle management even. They want to be involved and understand where things are happening, what's going on, to be able to get a pulse. And they might provide some guidance, but that guidance is to learn how to lead better. Help catalyze that individual to be able to go and find their own path to meet the mission and vision. Now, I'll close this off with what I heard from this senior executive when I was talking with him. And we really only went at that top level because that's what stuck in his brain as a member of the leadership team that reported into a C-level individual. Because he came from an organization where his technical and tactical expertise across his function was deep and industry leading, he felt that his role was almost 50-50 bringing his technical expertise. And if anything, more slated towards that technical expertise side. Whereas his boss said it should be 90% leadership. Us at this level need to be telling the good stories to bring the culture, to be able to go and help others lead. This blew away the senior executive, but to his credit, it made him rethink, one, how he was going to survive in that organization, but also how he went about things, how he could be successful, how the organization could be successful. And he humbled himself to be able to see that path and start developing the capacities to be more of a leader than the one who knew the playbook on how to do pretty much everything in his functional area in that industry. And it's led to significant growth for him since he had that conversation with his boss. Now, to tie that to organizational alignment and specifically Orgometrics, the tool, having this data and understanding where your organization is at in terms of leadership, in terms of communication, provides you with the insights and data you need to lead more effectively and impactfully. By knowing where some of the sore spots are, you can work with those leaders that report to you and the leaders that report to them to be more aligned leaders, to help them lead in accordance with the mission and vision. It gives you that power and that tool to identify where there's too much technical and tactical leadership and where there needs to be more aligned leadership. I'd love for you to give that some thought, how you're doing it, how you are empowering your leaders to lead versus what could be considered manage. And then do you have the right tools to understand in what areas you can be most impactful with leading? That takes care of another episode. Thanks for taking the time to listen in. Really appreciate it. If you like this, send us a little bit of a rating. Put some comments on. I love seeing them. They're absolutely marvelous. Thank you so much. Until next week, have yourself a great rest of the week. Cheers.